Reptiles are fun, but not really the easiest pets, except some of them. So today, let's go over the top 5 reptiles that anybody could take care of. My name's Adam, this is Erwin, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. One of the things you learn about reptiles when you first get into them or start thinking about getting them is that some of them aren't the easiest pets to take care of. Some of them need a lot. Reptiles are very extra, but not all of them. So the 5 easiest ones are actually really common, and today that's what we're gonna talk about. Why am I doing a second intro? He's too early. He comes later. We're gonna talk about... Okay, enough! Okay. Thank you. Anyway, I'm not saying don't do research. I'm just saying when you do research, you'll realize these reptiles are pretty easy. Pretty easy. Starting off with number 5, blue-tongued skinks. Now I'm gonna get some pushback because they are often touted as an intermediate type reptile, but I think if you do your research and you don't mind a larger enclosure, blue tongues can be very easy and even beginner level reptiles. And what's really cool is, I say this all the time, but I'll say it again. If you live in a humid climate or you live in a dry climate, there's really 2 very common species to pick from. Indonesians, like this guy here, Erwin. Whee! They get really big, they're really big skinks, but also they like it humid. He stays around 70% humidity in his PVC enclosure. Right now it was 72%, so perfect. If you live in a place like, I don't know, Arizona, a drier climate, let's say, you're gonna want a northern more likely. Now, this isn't to say that if you live in Miami, you can't have a northern, or if you live in Phoenix, you can't have an Indonesian. It just might take a little bit more work. I'm just saying if you're going for ease of care and not having to buy a misting system or a dehumidifier, and you just want ambient humidities to work, well, there's one for you. Now, these guys are big. If you can see this guy here, this is kind of as big as they get. Some of the northerns might get bigger, but Indonesians like this guy, who are beautiful, by the way. Look at how red he is on his belly and on his neck. I love this animal. Erwin is one of my favorite animals that I keep, and he's so easy. I literally mist him down once a day or every 2 days, it depends. If the furnace is on in the winter, then it gets a little drier in here, but in the summer, it's humid. I can go 3, 4, maybe 7 days without even misting him. It'll stay 69 to 80% humidity. And in terms of feeding, these guys, they'll eat things like dog food, cat food, prepared diets, bluey buffet, omnivore diet, leafy greens, vegetables, protein matter, scrambled eggs, even quail eggs. Their diet is so varied that I always have something on hand for him. I never have to worry about a specialized diet where, oh crap, I gotta go to the reptile store because I don't have anything. At least I'll have some sort of canned dog food or scrambled eggs in a pinch if I really need it. But also, Bluey Buffet is like $50 for a container and it lasts for nearly a year. In my opinion, he's one of the easiest reptiles I keep and the most rewarding. I can't say enough good things about blue-tongued skinks. Let's move on to the next one. Number 4, rat snakes and corn snakes. Now, my rat snake that I have is upstairs. Now, corn snakes are rat snakes, by the way, in case you thought I didn't know that. I'm gonna even extend this to all North American colubrids. Well, not all, but a lot of really common ones. California kingsnakes, most milk snakes, I would say, although some milk snakes are from South and Central America. Either way, corn snakes are kind of the big one. These are the really easy ones. Everyone can find one. They're at every PetSmart, Petco. I recommend going to a reptile shop or local breeder instead. But the point is, they're easily found. The only reason I don't have mine in my hands is she's upstairs in quarantine, but he's gonna be able to come down very soon. We're like 2 months in. If you wanna know why we quarantine animals, there's a video right here explaining why we do that. But regardless, these snakes, especially if we're talking corn snakes, California kings, are gonna get 4 or 5-ish feet, something like that. They can get a little bit bigger or stay a little bit smaller, but they're not gonna be super girthy. They're not gonna be strong enough to hurt anybody, even a child. Always supervise kids when they handle your animals, not just for your kid, but for the animal. These guys eat very well. A lot of the times they will stay on mice instead of rats, which are gonna be a lot more expensive than mice. You don't have to feed them bugs, which is nice. I really like animals that don't eat live insects. The temperature is going to be not super super hot, so you can get away with just maybe one basking light or heat mat or whatever the case is. So overall, the ease of care is my corn snake I pay attention to once a week when it comes to actual work. And by actual work, I mean cleaning out the poop, feeding the animal, filling the water dish takes literally 30 seconds every day or every other day. And feeding the animal takes 30 seconds and cleaning the poop takes 30. This animal takes me 3 minutes a week to take care of. 4 or 5 tops. I love animals that you'll spend way more time handling and enjoying than actually servicing, and rat snakes, corn snakes, king snakes, milk snakes, they all fit in that category. Can't go wrong with a corn snake. Look at that. The guy who used to hate on corn snakes all the time all of a sudden gets a corn snake and loves corn snakes. Sometimes I'm wrong about stuff. Number 3. African fat-tailed geckos. Now, AFTs, a lot of people will call them, African fat-tailed geckos. This to you might look like, I don't know, a leopard gecko. Well, that's because they are very similar. They're from different parts of the world. This is from Africa, whereas India, Pakistan, that area is where you'll find leopard geckos. And honestly, this entry could easily be interchanged. I just wanted to talk about something a little bit less common than leopard geckos. Now, African fattails might stay a little bit smaller, their head structure is a little different, their foot structure is a little different, their coloration is different, but they still come in lots of different morphs. They're still really easily cared for, really easily handled. Paying attention to this animal, again, it's like a corn snake. I feed it every 2 or 3 days. I feed it crickets, superworm, mealworms, whatever, but the staple is crickets or dubia roaches if they're legal where you live. So honestly, the feeding isn't that difficult. You do a little bit of supplementation, do your research to learn how to do that. But that, again, is cheap and easy. I miss the enclosure every 2 days. She's got a humid hide, which I last misted 4 days ago, and it's still sopping wet, basically. Honestly, I can't say enough good things about African fat-tailed geckos, not only because they're easy, but they're so darn cute. And when I say easy to socialize, I mean I handle this animal once every 2 weeks when I clean the enclosure, and that's basically it. It's not because I don't love this animal, it's just because I have a lot of animals, and a lot of those animals need actual dedicated sessions to get them to be handleable. So I handle this animal for fun, not for work, or what feels like work sometimes with some animals, like my monkey tail skink. What a night. I love this animal, but does not fit on this list. And honestly, in terms of care, kind of like, I'll put these guys kind of like where blue tongues are, where if you live in a more humid place, it probably is going to be easier to take care of one of these guys. If you live in a more arid place, maybe a leopard gecko, but the humidity difference is 20% or so. So it really doesn't matter, in my opinion. You can take care of these no matter where you live, and heating them and making the humidity what it needs to be is cheap, and it's easy because it's so similar to room temperature in comparison to other things. Like, for example, if you had a Savannah monitor or an Ackie monitor, those things are not going to be anywhere near room temperature. They need basking spots of like 120, 130, where the basking spot for an African fattail is going to be in the low 90s. Adorable, super easy. The enclosure size, something like a 20-gallon enclosure, or if you want to get big and go 40, you can do that too. But honestly, I'll say it again and again and again. Beautiful animals, so easy to care for, and so rewarding. This has been a lot of fun, actually, just doing this for the camera. Number 2, not bearded dragons. Sorry, buddy. I just have to put him in every video, otherwise people think he's died for some reason. Number 2, White's tree frogs. I always like throwing an amphibian in to ruin the list, and honestly, White's tree frogs might be the easiest ones of all. I'm not handling them because although they are more tolerant to handling than most other tree frogs or frogs in general, it's still like iffy if you want to handle frogs because they can take in toxins and detergents from your hands, and I literally had a shower 5 minutes ago. So it's likely I've got hair product all over my hands. Anyway, White's tree frogs are freaking amazing, just simply because of their ease of care, A. B, they're really big. They're not the biggest tree frog in the world, the white-lipped tree frog, which is from the same range as the biggest, but they're very similar. They can tolerate periods of dryness, of not humidity, dryness? Dryness is a word. A lot better than most other tree frogs. I'm just saying that if you want to go on vacation for a week and you only have somebody who can come twice in that span, you're going to be fine. Whereas with something like, I don't know, a red-eye tree frog, I would just feel they're more fragile. So these guys are robust, they're hardy, no excuse not to do your research or neglect them, but at the same time, they just take a little bit less TLC, a little bit less care or attention to detail. Now that noise you heard when I was like telling them to be quiet, and I don't actually care because I love the way that they sound, those are the noises that you're going to hear if you have males. I've got 5 white tree frogs now. I freaking love these animals. I love these animals. 3 of them live in one enclosure, 2 of them live in another. Put them in an enclosure that's a little bit taller than it is long. If you keep a pair, you probably want to keep them in a 24 by 18 by 18, that type of idea. Or what I've got them in right now is a 24 by 24 by 18, the 3 of them, and I want to get a bigger group and put them into something larger. So you can keep just one, or you can keep a bunch, and they cohab really well, which is something a lot of people ask about. A lot of people really like the idea of keeping reptiles, or in this case, amphibians, together, and I'm in that boat too. The diet is easy. They will eat basically anything that fits in their mouth if it's moving. Bugs, so things like roaches, if you have them, right? Dubia roaches. Crickets is what I feed mine mostly. Mealworms, silkworm, like a whole bunch of different types of worms. And of course, do your research before you cohab them. I'm not just saying throw them together willy-nilly. I'm just saying it's definitely possible. And number 1, Crested Geckos. Now this is a baby Crested Gecko. They do get a little bit bigger than this, but people always ask to see the babies is what I was gonna say. And that's why I never really handle them, just because they're a little bit flighty for the camera. You really have to pay attention. But if you want an adult, they start as babies, by the way, believe it or not. The adults are just easier in terms of handling, but in terms of care, they're basically the same. These animals are going to live at almost room temperature or very similar, right? Like a little bit elevated. The humidity is going to be really easy to take care of. They live in arboreal enclosures, so something a little taller than it is long or wide, which people like because it takes up less floor space in their house. The diet is going to be a prepared diet, mostly with some insects. So if you want to, for 6 of the 7 days a week, let's say, feed not insects, you can. Holy cow, buddy. I don't think anyone's gonna argue this is probably the easiest reptile to take care of, period. I pay attention to these guys, maybe even less than the corn snakes. Mixing up their food takes almost no time. I did a video, if you wanna watch it, right up here just a couple weeks ago of how I do that right at the beginning of the video. So that's easy. In terms of the diets, although it's become a little bit more expensive in recent years, it's still relatively cheap. If you've got one Crested Gecko, it might take $30 for the entire year to feed them, just the prepared diet and then the insects on top of that, which I think you could get away with $50 for an entire year feeding one Crested Gecko. They don't get very big in terms of geckos anyway. Now, if you want something a little bit bigger, what would fit on this list too, or Chahoua geckos even, or gargoyle geckos, I just think Crested Geckos are probably the easier, more easily found one, and they're really forgiving. Back in the day when I first started keeping Crested Geckos, we thought you were supposed to feed them baby food, and we did, and they lived just fine. That was before the days of Pangea, Repashy, Gargear, all these great companies, or at least before it was really super common to find those things in pet stores. So like you can see, wrangling them is really, really easy, and the care really isn't easy. Like there are no reptiles on this planet that I would say are easier. If you want to keep them in a super simple paper towel with some perches enclosure, or you want to make a beautiful bioactive type enclosure with live plants, they're the right size where they're not going to trample most plants. So I don't know how to say this any other way. They're the easiest. There's nothing easier than a Crested Gecko. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. Hit the like and subscribe if you like videos like this. We do 2 a week, Mondays and Thursdays. And a special thank you to the Patreon supporters. You guys are freaking amazing. I post pictures of baby geckos like this one. You get the videos early, discounts on the merch. I've got a couple trips coming up that I'm gonna let you guys know about. One next week, actually. I'm really excited about. And for as little as $1 a month, you can be part of that. Patreon. And that's it. Because I do videos twice a week, that means I'll see you on Monday.